The starving girl the marketplace was alive with noise. But to her, it felt like a cruel stage. Alien merchants shouted about their goods. Children ran through the dust, and adults laughed loudly. But in one corner, sitting on the cold ground, was a thin alien girl, her clothes torn and her face pale. No one cared about her. People passed by and looked at her with disgust. Some even smiled cruelly, as if her suffering was a joke. She had not eaten for days. Her stomach hurt so badly that she could not even cry anymore. Her body was shaking, her lips dry, and her eyes heavy with weakness. She stretched her hand once when a vendor threw away some scraps, but before she could touch them, a boy kicked them away. The crowd laughed at the sight. "Look at her," someone shouted, "not even worthy of garbage." The girl lowered her head, too weak to defend herself. She remembered a time when her mother gave her warm food, but that was long ago. Her family had abandoned her, leaving her to starve like dirt in the streets. She wanted to scream, to ask why no one cared. But no voice came out, only silence. The heat of the twin suns burned her skin. Dust rose every time someone walked past, making her cough painfully. Still, she stayed in the same spot. Too weak to move, every sound around her felt louder, sharper. Like the universe itself was laughing at her. Her stomach growled, loud enough that even strangers looked at her. Instead of pity, they laughed again. "She'd die right here," a woman muttered with a grin. The girl's vision blurred. She thought maybe she was already dying. Maybe this was the end. Her hands trembled as she pulled her knees to her chest. She wanted to disappear, to vanish into the dust so the laughter would stop. But she was still there, still alive, still in pain. Then it happened. Her body gave up, and she fell sideways onto the ground. Her head hit the dirt with a dull sound, her weak body unable to rise again. She could hear the crowd around her, whispering, laughing, mocking. But none of them moved to help. To them, she was nothing, just trash in the marketplace. Her heart beat slowly, each thump weaker than the last. She thought of food, of water, of someone holding her hand. But no one came. The world around her began to fade, the colors turning gray. She closed her eyes, whispering to herself in a broken voice, "I don't want to die." And then a shadow fell over her. She felt it before she saw it, a presence different from all others. She forced her eyes open, her vision blurry. There was someone standing above her, tall, strange, not like the others. The crowd went silent. For a moment, watching with curiosity, it was a human, a traveler in simple clothes. His eyes fixed on the girl. Unlike the others, he was not laughing. He bent down slowly, his face filled with something she had never seen before: concern. The girl blinked, thinking it was a dream. Why would anyone care about her? Why would a human stop for someone like her? He spoke, his voice calm but strong. "Are you all right?" No one had asked her that in years. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her throat was too dry, her body too weak. All she could do was stare. The human looked around, noticing the cruel faces of the crowd. They expected him to walk away, to laugh like them, but he did not move. Instead, he reached into his pack and pulled out a small piece of bread, fresh and warm. The girl's eyes widened at the sight, her body shaking harder. The smell of food was almost too much for her. He extended his hand toward her, holding the bread. The crowd gasped, some laughed louder. A human wasting food on that thing. Someone mocked, but he ignored them. His hand stayed steady, waiting for her to take it. The girl hesitated, her mind screaming that it was a trick, another cruel game, but her hunger was stronger than her fear. With trembling fingers, she reached out and touched the bread. The warmth spread through her hand like fire. She pulled it to her mouth, biting into it desperately. Tears fell down her face as she chewed. The taste was simple, but to her, it was life itself. The human watched silently. his expression unreadable, but in his eyes there was no mockery. No hate, only something she had forgotten existed: kindness. The crowd continued to laugh, but their voices sounded distant now. For the first time in so long, the girl felt alive. Her heart beat faster, her hands shook as she clutched the bread. Close, she looked at the human, her voice breaking as she whispered, "Why? Why are you helping me?" The human's answer was simple but powerful: "Because you deserve to live." Her breath caught, her chest rising and falling in disbelief. No one had ever spoken those words to her, and in that moment, something changed. The girl, who was treated like dirt, who everyone laughed at, now had hope, and it all began with a single piece of bread. Asterisk. The human stranger, the girl, sat on the ground, clutching the bread as if it were treasure. She ate slowly now, afraid that if she finished too fast, it might vanish like a dream. Her body shook with weakness, but her heart beat faster, because for the first time in years, someone had given her hope. The human sat quietly near her, his eyes calm but sharp. He looked at the crowd around them, faces twisted with laughter and judgment. They whispered among themselves, "Look at that fool," one man sneered, "feeding trash humans. Must be insane," another muttered, but the human ignored their words. His focus only on the girl. When she finished the bread, crumbs falling from her trembling fingers, she lifted her eyes to him. They were wide, frightened, yet filled with something new: confusion. "Why?" she whispered again, her voice soft and broken. "Why help me?" The human tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "Because no one else did," he said simply. His words cut through the noise of the market like a blade. The crowd went silent for a heartbeat, then erupted with cruel laughter once more. The girl flinched at the sound, shrinking into herself. Her whole life she had been treated as dirt. Her mind told her this could not be real, that the human would leave her, like all the others, and yet he stayed. He reached into his pack again and pulled out a small water flask. The girl's eyes locked onto it, her throat aching with thirst, but still she did not move. She feared he might take it away, laugh in her face, just as others had done when she begged for scraps. The human held it out, his hand steady, his voice firm. "Drink." Her fingers shook as she reached for it. For a moment, she thought he might pull it back, but he didn't. She lifted the flask to her lips and swallowed. Cool water slid down her dry throat, and she gasped at the relief. Tears spilled down her cheeks, her chest tightening as she whispered, "Thank you." The human nodded, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. But to her, it was everything. The crowd began to lose interest, turning back to their business. Yet some stayed, muttering and pointing. "She only drag him down." One woman spat. "Wait until she steals from him. They always do." Another said. The girl's ears burned, her shame pressing down heavier than ever. The human stood, towering over her small frame, and looked down with steady eyes. "You don't belong here," he said. The girl blinked, confused. "This place, it will kill you," he continued. "Come with me." Her breath caught, her mind racing. Go with him. Leave the place where she had always suffered. But what if he was lying? What if it was all another cruel trick? She wrapped her arms around herself, shaking her head slightly. "I can't. I don't trust." Her words broke off, her voice cracking. The human did not argue. Instead, he crouched down to meet her eyes, his voice lowered, calm but firm. "You don't have to trust me right now," he said, "but you should trust yourself. You don't deserve to die here." Her heart thudded, his words echoing inside her like thunder. No one had ever told her she deserved to live. Not once. She had heard only insults, laughter, curses. But now this human spoke as if her life mattered. The silence between them stretched, heavy and tense, She looked around. The crowd's eyes were still on her, cruel and mocking. If she stayed, she knew what would happen. Her body would give out, and she would die in the dust, with laughter as her final sound. Her hand trembled as she placed it on the ground, trying to stand. Her legs wobbled, too weak. But the human reached out and steadied her. His grip was strong, steady, not like the rough pushes she had felt before. For the first time in years, someone held her not to hurt, but to help. Gasps rose from the crowd. Look at that. He's actually taking her with him. What a waste. He'll regret it. The girl froze, her body shaking under their laughter. Every part of her screamed to sit back down, to stay where she had always been. But then she looked at the human, his face calm, unshaken. He did not laugh, did not mock, did not care what others thought. Her breath came fast, fear and hope battling inside her. She whispered, almost too soft to hear, If I go with you, will I be safe? The human's eyes softened. I can't promise easy, he said, but I can promise this: you will not starve again. Her chest tightened, her throat burning. She nodded slowly, the first spark of trust lighting in her heart. The human offered his hand, open and waiting. The crowd burst into laughter once more, shouting insults, but she ignored them. With trembling fingers, she reached forward and took his hand. The world seemed to pause. For years, she had been nothing. Dirt in the eyes of everyone around her. Now, with one choice, she was stepping into something unknown. Her stomach twisted with fear, but her heart whispered it was right. The human helped her walk, guiding her away from the marketplace. The crowd's laughter echoed behind them, but with every step, the sound grew smaller, weaker. For the first time, she was not alone, and deep inside, though she could not say it aloud, she felt it. Her life had just changed forever. The invitation, the marketplace noise slowly faded behind them as the human guided the girl away. Her thin legs shook with every step, her small hand trembling in his. She had not walked this far in weeks, her body nearly broken from hunger. But each step felt like stepping into a new world, a world where maybe she was not just dirt. The crowd's laughter echoed faintly in the distance. It still burned in her ears, but it no longer controlled her. For the first time, she was walking away instead of lying helpless on the ground. Her heart beat faster, not from weakness, but from fear of the unknown. The human stopped near a quiet alley. He crouched down so his eyes met hers, his voice steady. You don't have to go back there, he said. The girl looked down, her voice breaking. They will laugh if I follow you. They will call me worthless again. The human shook his head. They already did, he said firmly, but you survived. You're stronger than their words. She blinked at him, confused, strong. She had never thought of herself that way. Her whole life, she had only heard that she was weak, unwanted, and worthless. Now this stranger, this human, was telling her something completely different. Her stomach growled again, reminding her of the emptiness inside. The human reached into his pack once more and handed her another small piece of food. Her hands shook as she accepted it. Eating slower this time, each bite felt like a promise that maybe she could live another day. When she finished, he gave her water again. The cool liquid washed away the dryness in her throat. Her chest loosened, her body beginning to feel alive, but fear still weighed on her heart. She looked at him carefully, her voice small. Why do you care? No one else ever did, not even my family. Her voice cracked at the last word, the memory of abandonment burning deep inside her. The human was silent for a moment, his eyes thoughtful. Finally, he spoke in a low voice, because no one deserves to die alone in the dirt. Her heart pounded at his words. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. She felt warmth in her chest, a strange feeling she had forgotten long ago. Hope. The human stood and looked toward the road outside the market. "You can come with me," he said. "I don't have much, but I can give you food, water, and shelter." His voice was calm, but the offer felt heavy, powerful. It was not just food he was offering, but a chance at life. The girl froze, her eyes wide. Go with him. Leave everything she had ever known. Even if her life here was misery, it was still familiar. What if he was lying? What if it was a trap? Her breathing quickened, panic rising inside. She shook her head slightly, whispering, "I don't know you. I don't know what you want from me." The human didn't move closer. He didn't force her. Instead, he simply nodded, his expression calm. "That's fair," he said. "You don't know me. But I'm giving you a choice." He pointed back toward the marketplace, where the laughter still echoed faintly. "You can stay there, and you know what will happen." Then he looked back at her, his voice firm. "Or you can come with me and maybe live." Her chest tightened, tears filling her eyes. She wanted to believe him, but the years of cruelty whispered in her head. "They'll hurt you again. They'll betray you. They always do." Her mind battled her heart, fear against hope. The human turned slightly. "Ready to walk?" "I won't force you," he said. "But the invitation is open." He took a few steps forward, not pulling her, just waiting. Her small body trembled, her breath sharp. If she stayed, she knew the end. If she went, she faced the unknown. But maybe, just maybe, the unknown held something more than pain. She stared at his back as he walked a little ahead. Every step he took felt like time slipping away. Her heart screamed at her. This might be her only chance. Her knees shook, but she forced herself to move. She stumbled forward, her voice weak but clear. "Wait. I'll come." The human turned, his face calm, but his eyes soft. He reached out his hand once more. This time, she didn't hesitate. She took it, gripping tightly, as if afraid he might vanish. Together, they walked away from the place where she had been mocked, beaten, and starved. The crowd's laughter still rang in her ears, but it no longer mattered. Because now she had been invited to something different. Not just food, not just shelter, but the possibility of being seen. As more than dirt, her heart whispered to her with every step, "This is the beginning." A new home. The road stretched out of the market, dusty and quiet compared to the noise they had left behind. The girl's steps were slow, her body still weak. But her heart beat fast with fear and hope together. Every sound felt louder in the silence, her breathing, the crunch of their footsteps, the pounding of her own heart. The human walked ahead, steady and calm, holding her hand so she would not fall. He did not speak much, only looked back from time to time to make sure she was still with him. She clutched his hand tightly, afraid that if she let go, the cruel world would swallow her again. They walked until the road led to a small shelter built near the edge of the town. It was not large, not shining or rich, just a simple place with wooden walls, a metal roof, and smoke rising faintly from a chimney. To her eyes, though it looked like a palace, she had spent so long in the dust, in the cold, with nothing but mocking eyes around her. And now, here was a door that might open for her. The human pushed the door and stepped inside, guiding her carefully. The air smelled of cooked food, faint but real. Her stomach tightened painfully at the smell, reminding her again of hunger. The room was simpler: table, 2 chairs, a bed in the corner, and a small fire burning in a stove. But it felt warm, safe. Unlike the open streets where every gaze was a threat, the girl stood near the door, afraid to move further. Her legs trembled, her eyes wide. What is this place?" she asked softly, her voice uncertain. "My home," the human said, setting down his pack. He looked at her seriously. "And for now, it can be your home too." Her chest tightened, disbelief flooding her home. It was a word she had not felt In so long, the place she once called home had abandoned her, leaving her in the dust to die. Could this really be hers now? Her throat closed, tears threatening to fall. She shook her head slightly, whispering, You don't know me. Why give me this? The human moved to the stove, stirring the pot that sat there. I don't need to know you, he said firmly. I only need to see that you are alive, and that is enough. The girl froze at his words, her breath catching, alive. Someone was looking at her and seeing life. Not dirt, not trash, not something worthless. Her chest ached with feelings she could not understand. The human poured soup into a small bowl and placed it gently on the table. Sit, he said, his tone gentle but commanding. Her legs carried her forward slowly, almost unwillingly, as if afraid it was all a dream. She sat on the chair, her thin body sinking into it, staring at the steam rising from the bowl. The smell was rich, warm, full of flavors she had forgotten. Her hands shook as she lifted the spoon. She tasted it, the heat filling her mouth. Sliding down her throat, she gasped softly at the warmth. Her eyes filled with tears again as she whispered, It's real. The human sat across from her, eating quietly. He didn't laugh at her shaking hands or her tears. He didn't mock her for eating like someone desperate. He simply let her be. As if it was normal for her to be there, she ate until her stomach could take no more, and still she held the spoon, afraid to let go. Finally, she set it down. Leaning back in the chair, her body was tired. But not from weakness this time, it was from being full. Her chest rose and fell, her heart calm for the first time in years. She looked at the human across the table, her voice small. Why are you doing this for me? I have nothing to give back. The human leaned forward slightly, his eyes firm. I don't need anything back, he said. I only need to know you are safe. Her eyes widened, her lips trembling. No one has ever said that to me, she whispered. Her mind flashed with memories of cruel faces, laughter, harsh words, and now here was this stranger telling her she mattered. The human stood and pointed to the bed in the corner. You should rest, he said. You've been through enough for one day. She froze, panic flashing in her eyes. The bed looked soft, warm, safe. But fear gripped her heart. She remembered nights in the market where someone pretended kindness, only to hurt her when she closed her eyes. Her voice shook as she said, I can sleep on the floor. The human frowned slightly, then shook his head. No. You will sleep in the bed. I'll take the floor. He grabbed a blanket and laid it near the fire. As if it were the most natural thing, her heart twisted at the sight. This human, who owed her nothing, was giving up his bed for her. Her lips trembled. And before she could stop herself, tears spilled down her cheeks. She covered her face with her hands, whispering through sobs, Why are you so kind? I don't deserve it. The human's voice came steady, strong. Everyone deserves kindness, especially those who never received it. She lowered her hands slowly, her eyes red from tears. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that his words were true. Her body ached with exhaustion, her heart heavy with years of pain, but, for the first time, she felt a chance at peace. She walked slowly to the bed, climbing onto it carefully. The blanket wrapped around her thin frame, warmth sinking into her bones. Her eyes closed, but not in fear this time, for the first time in so long. She was not waiting for pain. She whispered softly before sleep claimed her. Thank you, human. And in the silence of that small shelter, a broken girl, finally, slept without fear. Rising conflict morning light slipped through the cracks of the wooden walls. The girl opened her eyes slowly, blinking at the warmth of the blanket around her. For a moment, she thought it was another dream, but then she saw the human sitting near the fire, preparing food. It was real. She had slept safely, without fear. For the first time in years, her stomach growled softly, but this time she was not ashamed. The human looked back and gave a small smile. Hungry again? He asked, his voice calm. She nodded quickly, her cheeks turning red. He placed a small plate of food on the table, simple bread and soup. Her hands trembled as she ate, every bite reminding her that she was alive. But outside the walls, the world had not forgotten. Rumors had spread through the marketplace like fire. A human had taken in the worthless, starving girl. People laughed at the story, mocking him as foolish. Some even grew angry, whispering that such kindness would only bring trouble by midday. The human stepped out to gather supplies. The girl stayed inside, sitting near the fire. Staring at the door with worry, her heart raced every time she heard footsteps outside. She was afraid the crowd might come, drag her away, leave her in. The dirt again. When the human returned, he carried food and wood for the fire. But his face was serious, his eyes sharp. He placed the supplies down and spoke firmly. "People are talking," he said. "They don't like that you're here with me, her." Chest tightened, fear rushing through her. She looked down at her hands, whispering, "I knew it. I bring nothing but trouble. They'll hate you too." The human shook his head, his voice steady. "Let them hate," he said. "Their laughter means nothing." He crouched down so his eyes met hers. "You are not trouble, you are alive. And that is enough." Her eyes filled with tears. But deep inside, guilt gnawed at her. He was being mocked now because of her. She remembered the cruel words she had heard before. Worthless, useless, dirt, and now those words would be thrown at him too. That evening, as the fire burned low, a knock sounded at the door. The girl froze, her breath catching in her throat. The human stood and opened it slowly. Outside, 3 figures from the marketplace glared in. Their eyes were filled with disgust and mockery. "We've heard what you've done," one man sneered. "You took in that thing. She's nothing but trash." Another spat, "She's steal from you, ruin. You better throw her out now, before she drags you down." The third added. The girl shrank back into the shadows, her whole body shaking. She had heard these words before, but hearing them now named at the human too was worse. She wanted to run, to protect him from there. Hatred. Her voice broke as she whispered, "Maybe they're right. Maybe I should go." But the human stepped forward, his eyes blazing. "No," he said firmly, his voice cutting through the air like steel. "She stays." The men laughed cruelly. "You're a fool, human," one of them said. "She's nothing but a curse." The human didn't flinch. "If kindness is a curse, then I'll carry it gladly," he replied. The men sneered, muttering threats before turning away into the night. The human closed the door and bolted it. His jaw tight, he turned to the girl, his expression softening. "They will talk. They may come again, but you are not leaving." Her chest tightened, her heart aching with confusion. Why was he willing to stand against them for her? Why risk his safety for someone everyone else saw as worthless? She whispered through tears, "I don't understand. Why do you fight for me?" The human sat beside the fire, his gaze steady. "Because you've never had someone fight for you before," he said, "and that ends now." Her body shook as she covered her face with her hands. Tears streamed down, not only of sadness, but of something new. The feeling of being defended, protected, cared for. That night, as the firelight flickered, she lay in the bed again. Her eyes stared at the ceiling, her mind restless. She feared the crowd would come in greater numbers, feared they would hurt the human because of her. Part of her wanted to slip away, to disappear, so he would be safe. But when she looked across the room and saw him sleeping on the floor, his face calm, her heart whispered that leaving would break her more than staying. She turned on her side, clutching the blanket, whispering softly, "I don't want to go back. I want to stay." Please let me stay." Outside, the wind carried the voices of the town, cruel and mocking. But inside that small shelter, there was warmth, food, and a human who refused to give her up. The battle was no longer about survival, was about worth. And though the world hated her, one man stood between her and the darkness. The girl closed her eyes, her tears drying for the first time. She felt a fragile seed of belief growing inside her, belief that maybe, just maybe, she had value after all. The test the night was silent at first. The fire burning low in the corner of the small shelter, the girl lay on the bed, clutching the blanket close. Her eyes heavy with fear and exhaustion. The human slept near the fire on the floor, his breathing calm. For a moment, it almost felt safe, but outside, shadows moved. Whispers crawled through the darkness, angry voices plotting. The rumors in the market had spread too far, and now some had decided to act. They would not allow a human to protect worthless dirt. The girl woke suddenly, her body tense. She didn't know why. But her chest felt heavy, her skin prickled with unease. Then she heard footsteps outside, more than one, crunching against the dirt. Her heart froze. The human stirred, sitting up quickly. His eyes sharp, even in the dim light, he motioned for her to stay quiet. His hand raised, then came the knock, hard and angry, shaking the wooden door. "Open up, human." A rough voice shouted, "You can't hide her in there forever." Another yelled. The girl trembled, tears welling in her eyes. They came. "They came for me," she whispered, her voice breaking. The human stood slowly. His shoulders straight. He walked to the door but didn't open it. His voice came strong and steady. "Go back. She stays here." The voices outside erupted in laughter, cruel and loud. "You think you can keep her? She's nothing but trash. She'll ruin you. She's cursed. Give her up or suffer with her." The girl's chest tightened. Her breath fast, she stumbled from the bed, falling to her knees. Her voice cracked as she begged, "Please, let me go. If you keep me, they'll hurt you. I can't let that happen." Her tears streamed down, her body shaking violently. She crawled toward him, her hands clutching his arm. "Please, just let me leave. I don't want you to suffer because of me." The human turned to her, his face calm but fierce. "No," he said firmly, his voice like iron. "You're not going anywhere." The knocking turned into pounding, fists slamming against the wood. "If you don't throw her out, we'll come in and drag her ourselves." One shouted. The human's jaw tightened, his hand resting on the wooden door, as if daring them. He crouched down and looked the girl in the eyes. She shook her head, sobbing. "You don't understand," she cried. "They'll kill you. They'll kill me." The human placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "Then let them try," he said, his voice low but powerful. "If they want you gone, they'll have to go through me first." Her breath caught, her heart pounding so loudly she thought the mob outside could hear it. No one had ever stood for her before. No one had ever said those words. She wanted to believe, but terror filled her chest. The pounding on the door grew louder. The wood cracked under the pressure. Splinters falling to the floor. The girl screamed softly, covering her ears. But the human stood tall, unshaken. His voice rose above the chaos. "She is not dirt. She is not worthless. And as long as I breathe, no one will harm her." The voices outside fell silent for a moment. The mob was stunned, unused to hearing anyone speak in her defense, but silence quickly turned back to rage. "We'll break your door down," one growled. "Then you'll learn what happens to fools who defend trash." The girl clutched the blanket to her chest, her tears falling. Her heart begged her to run, to protect him by leaving, but her body wouldn't move. She couldn't leave his side. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Why? Why do you risk everything for me?" The human glanced back at her, his eyes steady. "Because your life matters," he said simply, "even if no one else sees it." "I do." Her breath hitched, her chest aching with a strange, sharp pain. Hope and fear clashed inside her. Her heart screamed that maybe he truly meant it. Then came a heavy crash, the door shaking violently. The mob was trying to break in. The girl shrieked, pressing herself into the corner. Her body remembered every cruel hand, every mocking laugh. But now, between her and them, stood one human moving. Unbroken, the human grabbed a piece of wood from near the fire, holding it like a weapon. He faced the door as it cracked under the force of the attackers. His voice roared into the night. "If you want her, then come and face me." The pounding slowed, the mob hesitating. They had expected fear, surrender, but what they saw instead was defiance. A human ready to fight for someone everyone else had abandoned. The girl's tears blurred her vision as she stared at him. She whispered softly, "No one has ever stood for me like this." Her trembling hand reached out, gripping the blanket tighter. In that moment, something inside her shifted, for the first time in her life. She was not only surviving, she was being protected. Outside, the mob muttered angrily, but none of them dared to push through. The human's voice had shaken them. His stance had frightened them. Slowly, their footsteps faded into the night. Leaving only silence, the girl collapsed to the floor, sobbing, her whole body weak with relief. The human dropped the wooden plank. Breathing hard, he walked to her and lifted her gently. Guiding her back to the bed, "You're safe," he whispered, his voice steady. "As long as I live, you'll always be safe." Her tears soaked into the blanket as she whispered back, "Why? Why would you fight for me?" He gave her a small smile. "Tired but sure, because everyone deserves someone to fight for them." And in the quiet after the storm, she realized something she had never dared to believe before. She was not alone anymore. The turning point the night had passed in silence after the mob left. The girl lay awake for hours, her eyes wide, her mind heavy. Every creak of the wooden walls, every gust of wind outside made her flinch. But when she looked at the human sleeping near the fire, calm and steady, her heart softened. He had stood for her when no one else would. He had chosen her life over his own comfort, over the judgment of others. When dawn came, the light of the sun slipped into the shelter. The girl sat up slowly. Wrapping the blanket tighter around herself, she felt fragile, but she also felt something new, a spark. It was not just survival now, it was the thought that maybe she could be more than dirt. The human rose and stretched, his eyes falling on her. "You didn't sleep much," he said quietly. She shook her head, her voice weak. "I was afraid they would come back." He nodded, understanding they might. He said calmly, "But if they do, we'll face them again." Her chest tightened at his words. We, not just him, he had placed her in that sentence as if she belonged. Later that day, the human stepped outside to gather wood. The girl stayed near the doorway, afraid to be alone, but forcing herself not to hide. She wanted to see the world differently. Through his eyes, but when the villagers passed by on the road, they still pointed and sneered. "There's the cursed one man muttered. "She's poisoning the human with her filth." Another spat. The girl's hands trembled, shame washing over her. She turned quickly to go back inside, but stopped when she heard footsteps behind her. It was a young child from the village, a little boy holding a basket of fruit. He looked at her with wide eyes, not filled with hatred, but with curiosity. "Is it true?" he asked softly. "The human fed you?" The girl froze, unsure how to answer. The boy tilted his head, waiting. She nodded slowly, her voice trembling. "Yes, he gave me food. And water." The boy stared at her for a long moment, then held out one of the fruits from the basket. "Here," he said simply. "If the human helps you, maybe you're not bad." Her breath caught, her eyes wide. She reached out with shaking hands and took the fruit. The child smiled shyly and ran off before his parents could see. Tears filled her eyes, her heart pounding. It was small. So small, but it was the first time someone other than the human had given her anything. When the human returned, he saw her holding the fruit. She told him what had happened, her voice still shaking. He gave a small smile. See, not everyone will laugh forever, but not all were so soft. That evening, more villagers gathered outside the shelter. The same voices returned, angrier now, demanding she be cast out. She's a curse. One shouted, "She'll bring ruin to us all." Another yelled. The crowd pressed closer. But something was different this time. Among them were those who stayed quiet, their eyes uncertain. Some even looked ashamed, remembering how the human had stood fearless the night before. The human stepped outside, standing tall in front of the crowd. "She stays," he said firmly. "I won't repeat myself." The crowd roared with anger. But then, from the back, a voice rose, a woman's voice. "Why does she matter to you?" "Human, why defend her?" The human's answer came without hesitation. "Because she matters to herself," he said, his voice carrying strength. "Because she is alive, and every life has worth. Even if you choose not to see it," the words cut through the noise like fire. The girl stood just behind him, her body trembling. But when she saw the villagers hesitate, saw their eyes shift, she felt something stir inside her. Her whole life she had hidden, shrunk back, accepted their words, but now, maybe, she could speak. She stepped forward, her small frame shaking, her voice soft at first. I was nothing to you," she said, tears filling her eyes. "You laughed when I starved, you mocked when I begged. You wanted me to die." The crowd shifted. Some looking away, unable to meet her gaze, her voice grew stronger, though her body trembled. "But he gave me food, he gave me water, he gave me hope." She looked at the human beside her, her heart pounding. "He saw me as more than dirt. And because of him, I am still alive." Silence fell over the crowd. The laughter was gone now, replaced with unease. Some muttered under their breath, but others stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. The girl's tears streamed down her face, but she did not hide them. She gripped the human's hand tightly, whispering, "You invited me when no one else did. You saved me." The human squeezed her hand, his eyes calm, his stance unbroken. The crowd slowly began to break apart, some leaving, some staying silent. The voices of cruelty grew weaker, replaced by doubt, and in that doubt, a seed of change was planted. As the last of the villagers drifted away, the girl sank to her knees, overwhelmed. The human bent down and lifted her gently, his voice steady. "You were never worthless," he said softly. "They just never wanted to see your worth." Her chest ached as she leaned against him for the first time. She believed his words. She was not dirt, not trash, not a curse. She was alive, and her life had value. And in that small shelter, holding the hand of the human who had invited her when the world laughed, the starving girl who had once been treated as nothing finally began to see herself as something worth living for.